The stars above Earth had always been quiet. For thousands of years, humans looked up at the night sky and wondered if anyone else was out there. Scientists sent radio signals into the void. Dreamers wrote stories about first contact. Governments secretly prepared for the day when humanity would no longer be alone. That day came on a Tuesday afternoon. The Velothran fleet appeared without warning. One moment, the space around Earth was empty. The next moment, 12 massive warships hung in orbit like metal mountains. Each ship was bigger than anything humans had ever built. Their hulls were covered with strange symbols that glowed with soft purple light. Weapons systems, bigger than skyscrapers, pointed down at the blue planet below. People all over Earth stopped what they were doing. In Tokyo, office workers gathered at windows and pointed at the sky. In New York, traffic came to a complete stop as drivers stepped out of their cars. In small villages in Africa and South America, children ran to their parents with fear in their eyes. The world held its breath. Inside the largest ship, Ambassador Kethral prepared his message. He was a tall being with gray skin and 4 arms. His people, the Velothran, had built an empire across 300 star systems. They called it the hegemony. Kethral had personally brought 47 species into the hegemony's control. Some had joined willingly. Most had not. It did not matter to Kethral. The result was always the same. He looked at the data his scouts had gathered about Earth. The planet was rich with resources. Water covered most of its surface. The air was breathable. The dominant species called themselves humans, and they numbered in the billions. They had primitive technology. No faster than light travel. No energy shields. Their weapons were chemical and nuclear, dangerous to themselves but laughable against Velothran armor. This would be easy. Kethral activated the communication system and sent his message to every device on Earth that could receive it. Televisions, phones, computers, and radios all carried his words at the same moment. People of Earth, he said, his voice calm and confident. I am Ambassador Kethral of the Velothran hegemony. We have watched your species for many years. We have seen your struggles, your wars, your suffering. We come to offer you protection. He paused, letting his words sink in. The galaxy is a dangerous place. There are species out there that would destroy you without a second thought. The hegemony offers safety. Join our protection compact, and you will never need to fear again. In the United Earth Defense Council headquarters in Geneva, Switzerland, military leaders and politicians watched the transmission with pale faces. General Morrison of the United States gripped the edge of the table so hard his knuckles turned white. President Okonkwo of the African Union wiped sweat from his forehead. The Russian defense minister whispered prayers under his breath. Only one person in the room did not look afraid. Admiral Chen Weilin was 80 years old. Her hair was white, and her face was lined with age. She had served in 3 wars. Her grandmother had survived the Sino-Indian Resource Wars, a conflict so brutal that it had shaped Chen's entire family for generations. She had seen the worst that humans could do to each other. These aliens did not scare her. On the screens, Kethral continued his speech. The terms of the Protection Compact are simple. You will contribute 40% of your planetary resources to the hegemony. You will reduce your military forces by 60%. In exchange, we will defend you against all threats. You will become part of something greater than yourselves. General Morrison turned to his colleagues. They want us to disarm and hand over almost half of everything we produce. That's not protection. That's slavery. What choice do we have? Asked the European Union representative. Look at those ships. We have nothing that can touch them. Kethral's image flickered on the screen as he delivered his final words. You have 120 hours to accept our offer. If you refuse, we will be forced to protect you by other means. The hegemony has never failed to bring a species into its care. We do not intend to start now. The transmission ended. The room erupted into chaos. Everyone spoke at once. Some demanded immediate surrender. Others called for a nuclear response, even though they knew it would be useless. Fear filled the air like a physical thing. And then Admiral Chen laughed. It was not a nervous laugh or a crazy laugh. It was a genuine sound of amusement, as if someone had told her a very good joke. The room fell silent. Everyone stared at the old woman. Admiral? General Morrison said carefully. Are you all right? Chen wiped a tear from her eye. I'm sorry, she said. It's just, they have no idea, do they? They really have no idea. No idea about what. Chen stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the Swiss mountains rose toward the sky. Somewhere up there, beyond the clouds, alien warships waited for humanity's answer. They've done this before, Chen said quietly. You can tell from the way he spoke. This Kethvral has given that speech many times. He expects us to react in a certain way. Calculate the odds. Realize we can't win. Surrender to save ourselves. And shouldn't we? Asked the Japanese Prime Minister. They have technology we can't match. Fighting them would be suicide. Chen turned back to face the room. Her eyes were sharp despite her age. Tell me something. How many species do you think the hegemony has conquered? He said 47, someone answered. 47 species, Chen repeated. And every single one of them did the math. They looked at the hegemony's ships and weapons, calculated their chances of winning, and decided that surrender was the logical choice. She smiled, but there was no warmth in it. They've never met a species like us. The communication system crackled to life. Kethvral's voice filled the room once more. We have detected your gathering, human leaders. Do you have a response to our offer? Chen walked to the microphone before anyone could stop her. She pressed the button to transmit her voice to the alien fleet. Ambassador Kethvral, she said. Thank you for your generous offer. We need time to discuss it among ourselves. We request 72 hours to prepare our answer. There was a pause. Then Kethvral's voice returned, pleased and confident. 72 hours is acceptable. We appreciate your reasonable approach. The hegemony values species that understand their position. Oh, we understand our position very well, Chen said. We just need time to prepare our presentation. Presentation? You've told us about yourselves. It's only fair that we tell you about us. Another pause. Very well. We look forward to learning more about humanity. The channel closed. General Morrison grabbed Chen's arm. What are you doing? We don't have any weapons that can hurt them. We don't have any allies. What possible presentation could change anything? Chen gently removed his hand from her arm. General, you're thinking like a soldier. You're thinking about weapons and tactics and battle plans. She walked toward the door. The hegemony has conquered 47 species. They understand military power very well. What they don't understand is us. What do you mean? Chen stopped at the door and looked back at the room full of frightened leaders. They think they know what they're dealing with. A primitive species on a single planet. Easy prey. Her voice dropped to almost a whisper. They have no idea what humans are capable of. They've never seen what we do to each other. They've never experienced our kind of crazy. She opened the door. In 72 hours, we're going to educate them. Deep beneath the Swiss Alps, there was a place that did not exist on any map. It had been built during the Cold War, when humanity feared it might destroy itself with nuclear weapons. The bunker could survive a direct hit from the most powerful bomb ever made. It had enough food and water to keep 1,000 people alive for 10 years. Now it served a different purpose. Admiral Chen stood at the center of a massive underground room. Screens covered every wall. Hundreds of analysts, historians, soldiers, and scientists worked at computer stations. The air hummed with electricity and tension. Status report, Chen said. A young woman with tired eyes approached her. Dr. Sarah Park was one of the world's leading experts on human psychology. She had spent her career studying why people did terrible things to each other. Now her knowledge had a very specific purpose. We've compiled everything you asked for, Dr. Park said. The complete history. All of it. Not the version we teach in schools? Dr. Park shook her head. No, Admiral. The real version. The parts we try to forget. Chen nodded slowly. Show me. The main screen lit up with images and numbers. Dr. Park began her presentation with a heavy heart. Human history is approximately 10,000 years old, if we count from the first civilizations. In that time, we have recorded over 14,000 wars. Not small fights. Wars. Organized violence between groups of people. She pressed a button. New images appeared. Ancient battlefields covered with bodies. Medieval cities burning. Trenches filled with mud and blood. We have killed each other for territory, for resources, for religion, for ideas, for revenge, sometimes for no reason at all. Dr. Park's voice remained steady, but her hands trembled slightly. Conservative estimates suggest that war has killed over 1 billion human beings throughout history. Some estimates go higher. Chen watched the images without expression. She had seen war up close. These pictures did not shock her. What about the methods? She asked. Dr. Park took a deep breath. That's where it gets interesting. Humans are very creative when it comes to killing. The screen changed to show weapons throughout history. Swords and spears gave way to guns and cannons. Then came the machines of the 20th century. Tanks, bombers, poison gas. Finally, the mushroom cloud of a nuclear explosion filled the screen. We developed nuclear weapons in 1945. Dr. Park explained. Within 20 years, we had built enough bombs to destroy all life on Earth several times over. We pointed these weapons at each other and waited. For decades, the two most powerful nations on the planet lived in constant fear that the other would push the button first. A Russian general in the room spoke up. The doctrine of mutually assured destruction. MAD. Neither side could attack because both sides would be destroyed. Exactly. Dr. Park said. And here's the key point. We didn't eliminate those weapons because we became peaceful. We kept them. We improved them. Even today, we have enough nuclear weapons to end human civilization in less than an hour. Chen turned to face the room. This is what the Velathron don't understand. They've conquered species that calculate costs and benefits. They've never met a species that would rather destroy everything than submit. An American general raised his hand. Admiral, with respect, isn't that exactly what we should avoid? The Velathron have better weapons. If we threaten them and can't back it up, they'll just destroy us anyway. Who says we can't back it up? The room went quiet. Chen gestured to another analyst. Colonel James Wright was a military historian who had spent 30 years studying how weak nations fought against strong ones. Colonel, please share your research. Wright stood up and cleared his throat. Ladies and gentlemen, I've been studying what happens when technologically superior forces invade less advanced territories. The results are not what you might expect. He brought up a new presentation. Maps and charts filled the screens. In the 20th century alone, we have dozens of examples. Vietnam, Afghanistan, Iraq, Algeria. In each case, a major military power invaded a smaller, weaker nation. In each case, the invaders expected a quick victory. He pointed to the numbers. But the wars didn't end quickly. They dragged on for years, sometimes decades. The weaker forces couldn't win open battles, so they didn't fight open battles. They hid among civilians. They attacked supply lines. They planted bombs. They made the cost of occupation so high that eventually, the invaders gave up and went home. Chen nodded. Guerrilla warfare, asymmetric conflict. We've been perfecting these techniques for centuries. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, a xenopsychologist who had been studying the Velathron transmission, raised her hand. Admiral, I think I understand what you're planning, but I have a concern. Go ahead. The Velathron have conquered 47 species. They must have encountered resistance before. Why would our resistance be any different? Chen smiled. It was the first genuine smile anyone had seen on her face since the aliens arrived. That's the right question, Dr. Tanaka. And the answer is simple. She turned to Dr. Park. Tell them about human psychology under occupation. Dr. Park pulled up new data. I've studied every human occupation in history. The Nazi occupation of Europe, colonial rule in Africa and Asia, military occupations after wars. There's a consistent pattern. She showed graphs and statistics. When humans are occupied, they don't accept it. Even when resistance is hopeless. Even when fighting back means death. Some percentage of the population will always resist. Always. It's not rational. It's not strategic. It's something deeper. She paused, choosing her next words carefully. Other species apparently calculate whether resistance is worth the cost. If the math says surrender is better, they surrender. Humans don't work that way. We resist because we hate being controlled. We resist because our ancestors resisted. We resist because something inside us would rather die fighting than live on our knees. The room was silent. Chen walked to the center of the room. The Velathron think they're dealing with just another species. Calculate the odds, accept defeat, move on. But humans don't think like that. She looked at each person in the room. We hold grudges for centuries. We start wars over insults to our great-great-grandfathers. We kill each other over which version of the same God we worship. We have destroyed our own cities rather than let enemies capture them. We have burned our own fields, poisoned our own wells, slaughtered our own livestock, all to deny victory to invaders. She let those words sink in. The Velothran have never seen anything like us. They've conquered species that make sense, species that want to survive, species that accept reality when reality is against them. Admiral Chen's voice dropped low. We're going to show them what happens when you threaten a species that doesn't accept reality, a species that would rather burn down the universe than bow to someone else. Colonel Wright spoke up. Admiral, even if we resist, they have orbital weapons. They could simply destroy our cities from space. Yes, they could, Chen agreed. That's why our presentation will include one more piece of information, the part that will make them realize that conquering Earth isn't worth the cost. What information? Chen looked at the ceiling, as if she could see through the mountain to the stars beyond. They think we're trapped on this one planet. They think we have nowhere to go and nothing to threaten them with. She smiled again, cold and dangerous. They're wrong, and in 72 hours, we're going to show them exactly how wrong they are. She turned to her staff. Get me everything on Project Prometheus. It's time to let our guests know what we've been building while they weren't looking. The shuttle that carried the human delegation was small and ugly compared to Velothran ships. It had been built in a hurry, using technology that the aliens considered primitive. But it worked. It carried Admiral Chen and her team through the cold vacuum of space toward the Velothran flagship. Chen sat quietly during the journey. She was dressed in her formal military uniform, decorated with medals from 3 wars. Beside her sat Dr. Park, Dr. Tanaka, Colonel Wright, and 2 armed guards. They carried no weapons that could hurt the Velothran. Their weapons were different: information, history, truth. The shuttle docked with the flagship. The human delegation stepped into the alien ship and immediately felt the difference. The air was thinner. The gravity was lighter. Everything was built for beings taller and thinner than humans. Velothran soldiers lined the hallway. They were impressive creatures, each standing over 2 meters tall with 4 arms and skin like gray stone. They held weapons that hummed with energy. Their eyes followed the humans with curiosity and contempt. Ambassador Kethvral waited for them in a large chamber. The room was designed to intimidate visitors. The ceiling was so high it disappeared into shadow. The walls displayed images of conquered worlds, each one labeled with the symbol of the hegemony. Welcome to the Vanguard, Kethvral said. His voice echoed in the vast space. I am pleased that you have chosen to approach this matter reasonably. Chen bowed slightly. Thank you for receiving us, Ambassador. We have prepared a cultural exchange, as promised. Kethvral gestured with 2 of his arms. Please proceed. We are curious to learn about your species. Before we begin, Chen said, may I ask a question? Of course. How much do you know about human history? Kethvral considered the question. We know the basic facts. Your species evolved approximately 300,000 years ago. You developed agriculture 10,000 years ago. You achieved industrial technology 200 years ago. Nuclear technology 80 years ago. Spaceflight 60 years ago. He paused. Your rate of technological advancement is impressive for such a young species. Chen nodded. Yes, we've grown quickly. But you've only studied our technology. You haven't studied us. What do you mean? Chen gestured to Dr. Park, who activated the holographic projectors they had brought. The images flickered to life in the center of the chamber. Ambassador, you asked what we are. Let us show you. The first images appeared. Ancient humans hunting animals with stone weapons, villages burning, bodies lying in fields. Our species has been at war with itself since before we could write, Chen explained. We killed each other with rocks and sticks. When we invented metal, we killed each other with swords. When we invented gunpowder, we killed each other with bullets and bombs. The images changed. The American Civil War. The trenches of World War I. Soldiers dying in mud while machine guns cut them down by the thousands. Kethvral watched with interest. All species have conflict in their past. This is normal. Perhaps, Chen said. But look at the scale. Numbers appeared on the display. Casualty figures that climbed into the millions. World War I, 17 million dead. World War II, 70 to 85 million dead. The Chinese Civil War, the Russian Civil War, colonial wars across Africa and Asia. In the 20th century alone, Dr. Park said, her voice steady, humans killed approximately 100 million of our own kind, not through disease or accident, through deliberate violence. For the first time, Kethral's expression changed. Something like unease flickered across his alien features. That number seems high, he said carefully. It's actually conservative, Dr. Park replied. Some estimates go higher. The images continued. Nuclear explosions. Cities reduced to ash in seconds. Hiroshima, Nagasaki. Test after test after test. Each bomb bigger than the last. We developed weapons that could destroy entire cities with a single blast, Chen said. Then we built thousands of them. We pointed them at each other and waited. Waited for what? For the other side to make a mistake. For someone to push the button first. Chen's voice was cold. We lived like this for decades. Every day could have been the last day of human civilization. And we accepted that. We didn't disarm. We didn't make peace. We just kept building more weapons. Kethral shifted uncomfortably. Why would any species do this? Chen turned to face him directly. Because we would rather destroy everything than let someone else win. The chamber fell silent. Colonel Wright stepped forward. Ambassador, let me show you what happens when humans are conquered. New images appeared. Resistance fighters in occupied France during World War II. Guerrilla warriors in Vietnam. Afghan fighters hiding in mountains. Iraqi insurgents planting bombs. In every occupation throughout our history, Wright explained, some percentage of the population resists. Always. Even when resistance is hopeless. Even when it means certain death. They hide among civilians. They attack at night. They plant explosives. They assassinate leaders. They make occupation so costly that eventually, the occupiers leave. He showed statistics. French resistance operations. Vietnamese casualties. Afghan war deaths over 20 years. Your species has technology we cannot match, Wright continued. You could destroy our armies in days. But armies are not the problem. The problem is 7 billion people who will never stop fighting. Kethral made a sound that might have been laughter. You speak of primitive resistance against advanced technology. Our weapons can target individual humans from orbit. Your guerrilla tactics would be useless. Would they? Dr. Tanaka stepped forward. Let me ask you something, Ambassador. When your hegemony conquers a species, what do you do with them? They become part of the hegemony. They work. They contribute. You use them as labor. As resources. Yes, Dr. Tanaka nodded. So you can't simply kill everyone. You need living humans to serve your purposes. Kethral's eyes narrowed. Correct. Then here is your problem. Dr. Tanaka pulled up new data. Humans have extensive experience with occupation. We know exactly how to make it impossible to control us. She showed examples. Sabotage in factories, poisoned food supplies, information networks that spread secrets faster than any authority could stop them, acts of individual resistance that seemed small but added up to chaos. Every human who serves you could be a saboteur, she said. Every factory could produce defective goods. Every piece of information could be wrong. You would need to watch every single human, every single moment, forever. The cost would be enormous. We have methods of control, Kethral said, but his voice had lost some of its confidence. I'm sure you do, Chen said. And we have methods of dying uselessly, of destroying ourselves and everything around us rather than serving someone else. We've done it before, many times. She stepped closer to the ambassador. When the Russians retreated from Napoleon's army, they burned their own capital city, Moscow, one of their greatest cities, reduced to ashes, just to deny shelter to the invaders. She paused. When the Chinese faced Japanese invasion, they destroyed dams and flooded their own farmland. Millions of their own people died. They did it anyway, to slow down the enemy. Another pause. When the Jewish defenders of Masada faced capture by Roman soldiers, they killed themselves. All of them. Men, women, children. They chose death over slavery. Chen's voice dropped low. Ambassador Kethral, you have conquered 47 species. All of them did the math and decided that survival under hegemony rule was better than destruction. We are not like them. We are the species that destroys everything, including ourselves. Rather than submit, she looked directly into his alien eyes. You came here offering protection. But do you even know what you're threatening? Do you understand what happens when you back humans into a corner? The chamber was completely silent. We don't surrender, Chen said. We don't give up. We fight until there's nothing left to fight for. And if we can't win, we make sure nobody wins. She turned back to the holographic display. But wait, we haven't shown you the best part yet. Kethvral tried to regain control of the meeting. He stood taller and spread his forearms in a gesture that showed authority among his people. Your history is disturbing, he admitted, but it changes nothing. You are confined to one planet. You have no faster-than-light travel. You cannot reach us. You cannot hurt us. All you can do is make your own conquest more difficult. He stepped toward Admiral Chen. Despite his attempt to look confident, there was uncertainty in his movements. The hegemony has patience. If it takes 10 years to pacify your world, we will spend 10 years. If it takes 100 years, we will spend 100 years. Eventually, your resistance will die. Your children will grow up under our rule. Their children will know nothing else. In 3 generations, Earth will be just another hegemony world. Chen listened calmly. When Kethvral finished, she smiled. You're right about one thing, Ambassador. We don't have faster-than-light travel. She gestured to Dr. Park. The holographic display changed to show something new. A map of the solar system appeared, with Earth at the center. But we've known about your hegemony for quite some time. Longer than you think. Kethvral's expression shifted. What do you mean? 60 years ago, we detected strange signals from deep space. Faster-than-light communication signals. We couldn't understand them at first, but we knew they weren't natural. Chen watched the ambassador carefully. We knew we weren't alone. The display zoomed out to show the entire solar system. Small dots began to appear. On the moon, on Mars, in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, around the moons of Jupiter and Saturn. We've been preparing ever since. Kethvral leaned forward, studying the display. What are those markers? Hidden installations, research stations, mining operations, manufacturing facilities. Chen's voice was calm, almost casual. You were watching our planet, but you weren't watching everywhere else. While you studied Earth, we spread out. Impossible. We would have detected such activity. You detected what we wanted you to detect. Humans are very good at hiding things, Ambassador. We've been hiding things from each other for thousands of years. The display changed again. It showed a large asteroid, several kilometers across, surrounded by construction equipment. This is Object 2157 Prometheus, Chen said. It's a nickel-iron asteroid, approximately 6 kilometers in diameter. Normally, it orbits in the belt between Mars and Jupiter. She paused. Normally, Kethvral stared at the image. What have you done to it? We've attached engines to it. Very large fusion engines. The kind that can accelerate a 6-kilometer rock to very high speeds. The display showed a simulation. The asteroid began to move, slowly at first, then faster and faster. Numbers appeared showing its velocity. 10% of light speed, 20%, 50%, 90%. Ambassador, do you know what happens when a 6-kilometer asteroid hits a planet at 90% of the speed of light? Kethvral did not answer. He didn't need to. The physics were simple enough that any species with space travel would understand. The impact energy would be measured in the billions of megatons. Chen continued. It would crack the planet's crust. It would boil the oceans. It would turn the atmosphere into fire. She met his eyes. Nothing would survive. Nothing. The chamber was absolutely silent. We call them relativistic kill vehicles, Chen said. We have 17 of them. They're already positioned. They're already programmed with targets. The display changed to show a star map. 12 stars were marked with red dots. Your hegemony's core worlds, Ambassador. Your home world. Your industrial centers. Your population centers. We've calculated the trajectories. We've aimed the weapons. All we have to do is push a button, and they launch. Kethral's voice was barely a whisper. You would destroy yourselves. The moment you launch, we would retaliate. Earth would be destroyed. Yes, Chen agreed. We would die, but so would you. She stepped closer to the ambassador. You asked if we know who we're threatening. Let me ask you the same question. Do you know who you're threatening? Do you understand what you've done by coming here with your ultimatums and your deadlines? She gestured at the star map. We are a species that invented the concept of mutually assured destruction. We lived with nuclear weapons pointed at our own cities for decades. We accepted that any day could be our last day. We built bunkers and made plans for the end of the world, and then we went about our daily lives as if everything was normal. Her voice grew harder. We are not afraid to die, Ambassador. We are not afraid to take you with us. The only question is whether you're afraid enough to leave us alone. Kethvral stood frozen. His forearms hung at his sides. For the first time in his long career, he had no response. Let me be very clear, Chen continued. If your fleet attacks Earth, we launch everything. If you try to disable our installations, we launch everything. If you blockade our planet and try to starve us into submission, we launch everything. She paused. And if, years from now, after we're all dead, one of your ships comes back to see what happened to Earth, they'll find a planet of ashes, because we'll have destroyed ourselves rather than let you take what's left. Dr. Tanaka spoke up. Ambassador, I've studied your species. I've studied your history. You conquered 47 species because they all made the same calculation. They asked themselves, what do we lose by surrendering versus what do we lose by fighting? She gestured at the humans in the room. We don't make that calculation. We can't make that calculation. Something in our minds breaks when someone tries to take our freedom. We become irrational. We become dangerous. We become willing to destroy everything, including ourselves, rather than submit. She looked at Kethvral with something like pity. You've never encountered a species like this before. Your entire strategy assumes that your targets want to survive. We do want to survive, but not at any cost. Not at the cost of our freedom. Not at the cost of our dignity. Chen took over again. You have a choice, Ambassador. You can accept our offer of peace between equals. Trade agreements, cultural exchange, cooperation. We have much to offer each other. She let that sink in. Or, you can try to conquer us. You might even succeed, eventually. But it won't be quick. It won't be clean. And 12 of your core worlds will be burning rocks by the time it's over. She turned toward the exit. The choice is yours. We're going back to Earth now. You have 48 hours to decide. Kethvral finally found his voice. Wait. Chen stopped but didn't turn around. Why? Kethvral asked. Why would you tell us all of this? If you wanted to destroy us, you could have launched your weapons without warning. Chen turned her head slightly. Because we're not monsters, Ambassador. We don't want to kill billions of your people. We don't want to destroy your civilization. We want to live in peace. She faced forward again. But, if peace isn't possible, we want you to understand exactly why you're dying. We want you to know that you had a choice. We want your last thought to be the knowledge that this could have been avoided. She walked toward the door. We're a very spiteful species, Ambassador. We like our enemies to know they brought their fate upon themselves. The human delegation left the chamber. Behind them, Kethvral stood alone among the images of conquered worlds. Realizing for the first time that he had made a terrible mistake, the Velothran fleet departed 46 hours after the human delegation returned to Earth. They left without firing a single shot. They left without sending another message. They simply turned their ships around and vanished into the darkness between stars. The people of Earth watched them go with a mixture of relief and disbelief. For 3 days, they had lived with the threat of conquest or destruction hanging over their heads. Now, suddenly, it was over. But it wasn't really over. It was just beginning. News of what had happened spread across the hegemony's communication networks within weeks. The official report was classified at the highest level, but secrets have a way of escaping. Soldiers talked. Administrators whispered. Traitors carried rumors from star to star. A species had refused the hegemony. Not through military strength, not through advanced technology, through sheer, terrifying willingness to destroy everything rather than surrender. On conquered worlds throughout the hegemony, people began to ask questions they had never asked before. What if we had refused? What if we had fought? What if we had been willing to pay the ultimate price? The Velothran Council called an emergency session. Kethvral stood before them and delivered his report. He told them about the relativistic kill vehicles aimed at their homeworld. He told them about human history, about the wars and the genocides and the weapons pointed at their own cities. He told them about a species that would rather burn than bow. The council members listened in stunned silence. What do you recommend? The High Counselor finally asked. Kethvral thought for a long moment. I recommend we leave them alone, permanently, and I recommend we delete all records of their location from our databases. Why? Because if we try again and fail, they won't just defend themselves. They'll come for us. Maybe not today. Maybe not in 100 years. But eventually, they'll develop faster than light travel. They'll find us, and they'll remember. He looked at the faces of the most powerful beings in the hegemony. These humans hold grudges forever. They start wars over insults from centuries ago. They're patient, they're clever, and they're absolutely ruthless. The best thing we can do is pretend we never found them. The council voted unanimously to accept his recommendation, but the damage was already done. 10 years after the Velothran departure, the first alien ship arrived at Earth with a different kind of message. It was a small vessel, poorly maintained, carrying representatives from a species called the Thren. They had been conquered by the hegemony 300 years ago. They had given up all hope of freedom, until they heard about Earth. "We want to know how you did it," their leader said, standing in the new human diplomatic center that had been built in Geneva. "We want to know how to be free." More ships followed. The Kalari, who had been forced to work in hegemony mining operations for generations. The Voss, whose culture had been systematically erased and replaced with hegemony propaganda. The Remnath, who remembered stories of resistance from their ancestors but had never believed freedom was possible. They all came with the same question. How? Admiral Chen, now Ambassador Chen, answered them the same way each time. "We weren't stronger than them," she explained. "We weren't smarter. We weren't more advanced. We just had something they didn't understand." "What was that?" the aliens would ask. "Spite," she said. "Pure, unreasonable, unbreakable spite. We would rather destroy ourselves than give up. They couldn't threaten us because we were already willing to pay the ultimate price." The aliens would nod, but she could see they didn't quite understand. They had been conquered. They had made the rational choice to survive. The idea of choosing destruction over submission was difficult for them to grasp, so Chen would tell them stories. She told them about Leonidas and his 300 Spartans, who stood against an army of hundreds of thousands and died rather than retreat. She told them about Masada, where Jewish defenders killed themselves and their families rather than become Roman slaves. She told them about the Warsaw Uprising, where Jews in a tiny ghetto fought Nazi soldiers with homemade weapons, knowing they would die, fighting anyway. "This is who we are," she would say. "We're the species that fights when there's no hope. We're the species that refuses to accept reality when reality is unfair. We're the species that says no even when no means death." She would look at her alien visitors with fierce pride. "You can be that way too. You just have to decide that some things are worth more than survival." Not all of them understood. Some returned to their conquered worlds and continued their lives of quiet submission. But others listened. Others remembered. Others began to organize. 20 years after the Velothran departure, the first rebellion broke out on a hegemony mining world. It was small and quickly crushed. But it was only the beginning. 30 years after the departure, a coordinated uprising liberated 3 worlds in the same week. The hegemony sent warships to restore order, but the rebels had learned from human history. They didn't fight in open battle. They hid. They sabotaged. They made occupation so costly that the hegemony began to question whether those worlds were worth keeping. 50 years after the departure, the Galactic Free Council held its first official meeting. Representatives from 23 liberated species gathered in the rebuilt United Nations building in Geneva. They chose Earth as their meeting place deliberately. This was where it had started. This was where the galaxy had learned a new equation. Ambassador Chen was 93 years old now. She moved slowly, supported by medical technology that kept her ancient body functioning, but her mind was still sharp, and her eyes still burned with the same fire that had stared down Kethvral half a century ago. She addressed the council with words that would be remembered for generations. "You came to us asking for our secrets," she said. "You wanted to know how we survived. The answer is simple but difficult. We survived because we refused to accept any alternative." She looked at the diverse faces watching her, beings from dozens of species, all free for the first time in their people's memories. The hegemony ruled through fear and logic. They showed you their weapons and their armies, and you calculated that resistance was useless. You made the rational choice. She smiled. "Humans aren't rational. Not when it comes to freedom. Not when someone tries to put a collar around our necks. Something inside us breaks, and we become capable of anything." She gestured at the hall around her. "I'm not telling you to be irrational. I'm telling you that sometimes rationality is the enemy. Sometimes The only way to win is to make your opponent believe that you're crazy enough to destroy everything rather than lose. Her voice dropped low. The hegemony understood ships and weapons and economics. They didn't understand spite. They didn't understand a species that would burn down the universe rather than kneel. She paused, letting the silence fill the chamber. Now you understand. Now you know that the math of tyranny only works if the victims agree to play by the rules. Stop playing by their rules. Stop calculating costs and benefits. Start asking yourselves what you're willing to die for. She turned and walked slowly toward the exit. At the door, she stopped and looked back one last time. They offered Earth protection. They threatened us with their fleet and their weapons and their empire. And we laughed at them. Her voice echoed through the hall. Now the whole galaxy is laughing. And the hegemony is finally starting to understand the joke. She left the chamber. Behind her, the representatives of 23 free species rose to their feet and applauded. The sound echoed out of the building, out into the streets of Geneva, up toward the stars that no longer seemed quite so threatening. Humanity had changed the galaxy not through conquest or technology, but through example. They had shown that tyranny could be defeated. Not easily, not safely, but definitely. All you had to do was be willing to lose everything, and then refuse to lose.